On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with author Jeff Haden about why he thinks focusing on your big goal is the wrong way to go. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and joining me today is a repeat guest. He's been with me. I don't know if you know this, Jeff, but you have been one of my most repeat guests of all time. This is Jeff Haden. He's an author of The Motivation Myth. It's an awesome book. You should check it out. Jeff, thanks for joining me, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It does make me question your judgment.
Well,
I'll just pretend that that's a good thing. How about that?
Yeah, I like it. You should totally pretend that it's a good thing. So I wanted to kind of dig into The Motivation Myth, which was a book that I really enjoyed. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but there was one concept that you know how in a lot of books there's like one thing that really sticks with you. There was one in particular that you talked about in your book about setting a big goal and then sort of forgetting it. And that was one of the big takeaways. But you talked very specifically about how you decided to go about that in trying to grow your writing influence. So can you talk a little bit about what you did and how that worked?
Sure. Wow. So the big goal, I guess, was that I wanted to, it sounds nebulous, but I wanted to grow a reasonable audience. I wanted to have an audience of some size. I didn't have a plan for it other than the bigger my audience, the more money I made for me, which is a plan in and of itself. But I didn't have this master plan of, okay, if I do this, then if I get to a certain point, I'll do a book and I'll do speaking and I'll do whatever, all of which has occurred. But that really wasn't the plan. The big plan, especially, I'm starting from zero, basically, was I want to build a big audience. So that's a fine goal. And I had a number for myself. I thought, 1 million page views a month. If I'm read by 1 million people, that's a pretty cool goal because at the time that was a really big number for lots of people. Sure. And so that's great. But if I sat there every day and thought, okay, how many did I get today? What's today? What's today? You get bogged down in the today. And then I think we've talked about this before, that whole distance between here, which is, 500 people, and 1 million, it's so big and so daunting that you quit. Yeah. And so I just said, that's my goal. So let me create a process based on that goal that I feel good about, that I think can get me there if I keep my head down and do the work, knowing I might adjust a little bit along the way and stuff like that. But basically, if I do the work and I do it this way, maybe I've got a shot. And so the idea that you forget about the end goal, I think is really important. It should inform your process because if you don't, it's a cliche, but you have to know where you're going in order to create a roadmap to get there. Right. But then you put that aside and just focus on what am I trying to do today? And so I stripped away all the other stuff that I think is, I get lots of questions from people who are trying to do the same thing. And they always want to talk about, what social media are you using? What tools are you using to analyze your audience? There's all this other analytics stuff that has nothing really, in my mind, to do with the content that you create. It's all strategy and tactics and not actually content. And so I didn't worry about all that stuff, partly because you will never quite know why something hits big and why it doesn't. There's a lot of variables to that. And I could analyze one post to death and think, okay, I just learned a lot. And the next one may behave completely differently and for different reasons. So I threw all that aside. In a long-winded way, I threw that out and said, what is my job? My job is to create as good of content as I can that people enjoy, that people want to share, that people benefit from, focus on the reader, keep my head down and do that. And hopefully the audience part will take care of itself, which really it does, because if you create things people want, the audience takes care of itself. Yeah. And if you don't, no amount of strategy and tips and tactics and all that other stuff really matters because you don't have anything that they want. So setting that goal but then forgetting about it allowed me to stay every day just focused on what am I doing today? What am I doing today? What am I doing today? What did I learn? How can I get better? Instead of obsessing over this goal that I've put on the wall, which I didn't, but pretend I did, which I think is distracting. And so hopefully that answered your question. But if you have something you really want to achieve, you can think big, and it's great to think big, but then let that inform your process, and then focus on the process, knowing that if you do the work, you have a really good chance of getting to that end goal. And if you don't do the work, you will never get to the end goal anyway. So you might as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Jeff. I think it relates to, you're talking content, but that could be sales. That could be building a business, whether it's entrepreneurial. And you made a comment that I thought was interesting. It's something that I've said, and every time I say it, people kind of look at me weird, in that I never know the thing that is going to be the thing, right? And what you just said is, I'm like, when I'm writing blogs, I'm like, oh, well, it seems like every time I get really personal, that seems to go well. And then the next time I do that, no one cares. Yep. And I think that's true in sales and starting a business too. It's like, don't try and predict what everybody's going to love. Just do the work.
You can learn from
Yeah.
things that do well, and you can use that to be a part of whatever your process is. Like you have realized that if you are more personal, mm-hmm. it tends to resonate better with people, but it is not guaranteed that it will always resonate. But you know that should be in your mix. Mm-hmm. And so you add that to your mix. But then when something else hits, you have to decide if it's a one-off or not, and you experiment with that. And then maybe that becomes part of your mix too. And so no one says that you have to do the same thing day after day after day after day, and you shouldn't. But you should have a process that you follow every day, and then you can build on that with the stuff that you learn. Yeah. But there are some goals, like let's use cycling, because I like bikes. And I haven't been riding this winter. I've been doing other physical stuff. So if I decided that this summer I wanted to ride a 100-mile Grand Fondo somewhere, I know that I need to put about 2,500 miles in my legs in a 4-month period. And if I do that, I'll be fine. I have figured that out over time. That's a goal that you can sit there and quantify and just put targets on and know that you'll get there. But something like you said, sales, marketing, management, leadership, creating products, all of those other things, they are not that scientific. There are variables that you don't always know and can't always control. Right. And so that's when you pick your goal, you create a process that feels good and it seems like it will work, and then you keep your head down and do the work and learn and adapt as you go along.
Yeah, I think that was a huge takeaway for me. And you know how every time you hear things and sometimes they hit you at the right time. That hit me at the right time, where it was like, I've always been a think big goal person. And you hear all this stuff that's like, oh, you got to think big and focus on that goal all the time. And what I'm hearing from you is that's not, that can be frustrating. Like the distance, you talked about the distance between.
It's demoralizing when you compare yourself to that. If I can add one other thing, there's a lot of people talk about goals and, should you set the giant goal? Should you set the smaller goals that are more achievable? How do you pick a goal? I promise I'll try to keep this short. I know I talk in paragraphs and not in sentences.
It's great.
Sorry. But say riding a bike again. The first time that I tried some big cycling event, I picked a 102-mile, 11,000 feet of climbing ride. That was my goal. My goal was not to be the fastest person there. That would have been impossible because there are professional cyclists that were coming through this. That's not me. I'm not even a super serious amateur cyclist. So that was stupid. That would have been a foolish goal, and there's no way to get there. But doing the work, I can ride this in a reasonable time and not embarrass myself, and I have a chance of success. It's still a huge goal, but it's not an impossible goal. And I think sometimes people get hung up on that. Like you talked about content earlier. If I had decided that I was going to be Malcolm Gladwell, probably not going to happen.
Right.
And if it does, great. But that should not be my goal because that's too big. But having a goal of I'll get this many readers and I'll build this kind of audience and I will create things that people want to read and get value from, that's an attainable goal. It's still a big goal because there's tons of people that aren't hitting the page views that I do. Right. But it is an achievable goal. And so sometimes when you're setting goals, you can go crazy. And usually where you go crazy is when your goal is in comparison to other people. So if you decide you want to be If you're going to start a company and you think you're going to be Richard Branson and that's your goal, that's hard to do. But if you say, I want to build a $10 million business, that's really hard, but people do that in a variety of fields, and there are a variety of folks that pull that off. So pick a goal that's something that you can achieve and that has some kind of measurable thing that just compares to yourself, and don't compare to other people, because comparing to other people is a losing game for the rest of your life, because there is always somebody smarter, stronger, more talented, more this, more whatever, and you will always lose. But if you compare yourself to where you started, you will always win if you do the work.
Yeah, I love the self-awareness part, really, because it's like, I think that's a piece where you're just like, yeah, don't worry about comparing to other people, and that's great. So one of the things that I know about is that, go ahead.
If I interrupt, it's really hard, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, because like with the cycling thing, when I started riding and I got better, and then I was better than some people, and then I would think, I'd go riding with a couple professional guys and they would blow me away, and I would think, man, I'm really going to put in the work so I can hang with those guys. And I had this moment where I thought, why would I do that? Why would I what is it in it for me other than ego? Right. What's in it for me to put that much time and effort into something that has no measurable outcome to me whatsoever? It doesn't make my life better in any way. It's just me comparing and maybe being a little jealous, and feeling inferior. And so I finally realized that, wow, that extra 5% I'm looking for takes 5 times as much effort, and it's not worth it to me. So I don't know. I know I just beat that subject to death, but the comparison thing, if you can get away from comparing yourself to other people and just pick your goal and then compare yourself to your progress to the goal, much better place to be.
I love it. Final question for you, because one of the things I know is that you put your head down, you did the work, you did tackle the big goal. So how do you stay motivated then? How do you determine what's next?
One of the concepts, I hate to refer to my book, but I will. One of the concepts, everything after Bud is BS. But one of the concepts in my book is the whole idea of being a serial achiever, where you pick one thing, work really hard at it. If you get to some point where you say, you know what, I've enjoyed that, I've gotten the fulfillment of it, I've wrung every last piece of whatever benefit there is out of that, and I think I'd really like to do something else, that's great. And so, but what you have to do if you're going to achieve something really big, because we're all busy, you can't have 5 of those. You really just have to have, what's my professional, what's my family, then, okay, I'll pick one personal thing, let's say. You can't do 5 because you'll never do any of them. So the cool thing about that approach is, as you are working on that thing, there are probably 2 or 3 other things that are over there on the side calling to you every once in a while saying, gee, wouldn't this be fun? Or, oh, I would really like to try that. And so when you find yourself, let's say you are reaching whatever the goal is, and you're kind of peaking and you're saying, okay, what else is left here? And is there more benefit to me? And do I want to be able to ride as fast as the fast guys? That's maybe the moment where you look and say, okay, that other thing I was thinking about, that might be really fun. And I think I should try that. And so if you do it that way, whatever's next is almost kind of natural, because it's been sitting there percolating the whole time. And the cool thing is, when you go from one big pursuit and you do well at it and you switch to another one, you might think all that time is lost, but it's really not. You may not put some of the skills you learned to use at whatever your new pursuit is, but all the things you learned about process, about putting your head down and doing the work, about staying focused, about determination, about building your own sources of willpower, about learning how to motivate yourself, all those things you carry with you. And the next one is easier because you've learned how to do hard things. And if there's one skill in life that I think is more important than others, it's the ability to learn in yourself how to do hard things. And then you get the confidence that comes from that. When something new comes up, you can say, wow, this is really daunting, but I did that.
Yeah.
I can do this. I know how to do this. And it is a matter of time and effort and focus. And if I do those things, I can get to a really cool place. So next is almost natural when you focus on 1 or 2 things, because there are always other things out there that you are kind of itching to get to, and you will.
That's amazing, Jeff. Thank you so much. You've answered my 3 questions.
And a question for you then, since you talked about next.
Okay.
Now, you and I are buddies, and so you've got kids that are what 20 and 17, I think, and
Yes.
so you've got the birdies are flying, which is good because your job as a parent is to raise happy, successful kids who are independent and who can live their own lives in a happy kind of way. So that's a wonderful achievement, and you should be very proud of that. But that also does leave you in this place where, okay, that was a big chunk of your life, and it'll still be a big chunk of your life, but it does shift.
Yeah.
All my kids are out, so I know it shifts. So what's next for you with that in mind?
Man, that's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. It's something, the good news is I think that my wife and I have been talking about it, and it's not real yet, but we've been talking about it for a couple years because we know that a lot of people do struggle with it. My wife has taken on a big project where she's renovating a big commercial building, which is like kind of crazy. And for me, I think refocusing on some fitness. I'd like to get back into running, which obviously takes an extensive period of time. And then I really would like to focus on trying to write a new book. I've written a couple books, but this is one that's been percolating in my head for a while. And like you said, it's like, what's next? This is that thing, right? That has been kind of out there that I've wanted to do for a while. And I feel like maybe that's the next natural transition. And even as I talk about it, I get excited. And so that tells me maybe I'm on the right track there.
It is funny how that works. If you're always thinking about, well, no, I just think most people, if you get over the idea of grieving over whatever the last thing was and just focus on, that was really cool and I feel really good about that and what can I add to my life, then that's the place to be. And, from experience, your kids leave. Ours haven't come back, not moving back in again, but they're always there. And it is fun. There is a cool thing about watching them become adults and do their thing and do things that you never did. And, it's a really cool thing. And if you approach it that way, and if you always thought that your goal was to get them to where they could fly, which I'm sure yours was, then that's awesome. So, yeah, that's really cool. But like you said, if you're excited about the idea of your book, well, there you go. There's cool. Next. And when you get close to the end of the book, when you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is taking forever, because it always does, you'll have something else that will have been percolating that you had to put aside or had to keep off to the side because you were focused on that. And that's a cool thing.
It is. Jeff, thanks so much. I appreciate you being a repeat guest. I appreciate you taking the time. And as always, we will do it again, okay?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, sir.
Cool. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.